Welcome to Heian Haven. I'm Dawn. Today we're discussing Chapter 7 of the Tale of Genji, Momiji no Ga. This chapter overlaps the past two, starting in the autumn and moving through to the next fall. The event that begins this chapter, from which we derive the chapter name, is mentioned in both the previous two chapters. We'll start with our usual summary for shared context. Genji's father, the emperor, is preparing for a rare excursion to visit a former emperor at the Suzaku Palace, and there is to be dancing and musical entertainment in celebration. Because the court ladies cannot leave the palace to attend, and especially for Fujitsubo, the emperor orders a dress rehearsal at the palace. Genji dances the blue sea waves. His magnificent performance during the rehearsal is only superseded by his performance at the Suzaku Palace. Genji, Tono Chujo, and many others receive promotions in rank. Sometime later, Fujitsubo withdraws from the palace as she nears her confinement period, and Genji again neglects his wife, Aoi, spending his time trying to see Fujitsubo or with Murasaki. Aoi has heard that Genji has moved a woman into his villa in Nijo, but does not know yet that she is a child. On New Year's Eve, Murasaki changes out of mourning robes, the 3-month mourning period for her grandmother having ended. Genji makes his New Year's visits to the emperor, the heir apparent, and Fujitsubo. In the second month, Fujitsubo has a son. He looks just like Genji. The emperor is delighted with the child, and no one suspects anything. Genji begins spending so much time with Murasaki, again neglecting Aoi, that rumors swirl and even the emperor rebukes Genji for his behavior. Ever fickle-hearted, Genji begins flirting with Genno Naishi, a much older lady who serves in his father's wardrobe staff. His father finds this funny, and after rumors take hold, he coldly ends their budding affair, eliciting complaints from the lady. Tono Chujo is so curious he begins an affair with Naishi. He then waits for an opportunity and catches Genji with Naishi, giving him a fright. They tussle and clothing is torn. After exchanging a torn sleeve for an obi, the two decide to keep the matter secret, but Tono Chujo never ceases teasing Genji about it. He does not, however, tell his sister Aoi, keeping it in reserve if needed. In the 7th month, Fujitsubo is elevated to empress, and Genji too is raised in rank. This of course angers the Kokiden consort, mother of the heir apparent. Genji's son continues to grow in beauty, and the resemblance between them becomes more distinct. And though this mortifies Fujitsubo, the courtiers seem to think it was perfectly natural, and the affair remains a secret. I'm struck once again with the strong feeling of reading a letter from a friend revealing the most salacious gossip. Genji's love life is incredibly complicated. Even reading the same chapter 5 times in a row, with the variations, isn't repetitive, and each telling reveals something that the others do not. So maybe it's more like hearing the same thing from 5 different friends. Let's start by talking about the chapter title, Momiji no Ga. Did you notice earlier that I didn't offer an English translation for it? That's because I'm not really satisfied with the translations offered. Here is Tyler's explanation of the title, Momiji no Ga. Ga means a celebration, a jubilee, for a great personage on the occasion of his attaining a felicitous advanced age. The personage here is a former emperor, the father or perhaps the elder brother of Genji's father. The occasion is probably his entering his 40th or 50th year, and the celebration takes place under bright autumn leaves, Momiji. But Momiji isn't just autumn leaves. It's specifically maple leaves, and if I'm going to be really picky, which is what we're really here for, this celebration does not take place in autumn. It is fully winter. The 10th lunar month marks the beginning of winter, and this celebration is taking place on the 10th day of the 10th month. This would be about mid-November. During Genji's dance performance, he springs out of a pile of leaves and wears a crown of leaves. Knowing all that, which of these translations do you think is the best? Suematsu's Maple Fete, Waley's translation, The Festival of Red Leaves, Seidensticker's An Autumn Excursion, Tyler translates it as Beneath the Autumn Leaves, or Washburn's An Imperial Celebration of Autumn Leaves. Not an easy choice, is it? None of them quite capture what the Japanese language encapsulates, but that's the exact trouble in translation, isn't it? Wrapped up in the event that begins the chapter, the Momiji no Ga, are 2 translation differences I'd like to point to. The first is the location of the celebration. As is common for him, Suematsu does not translate the name into English, and we have Suzaku-in. Our 3 most recent translations all use the half translation Suzaku Palace. It is left to Waley to attempt an actual translation, Red Sparrow Court. A little quick research lets us know that Suzaku, the vermilion bird of the south, is one of the 4 symbols. The other 3 are Azure Dragon of the east, the White Tiger of the west, and the Black Tortoise, also called Black Warrior, of the north. Suzaku can also be translated as Phoenix. It's quite a powerful name. The other difference surrounding the celebration is the name of the dance Genji performed. Blue Main Waves by Suematsu, Dance of the Blue Waves by Waley, Waves of the Blue Ocean by Seidensticker, Blue Sea Waves by Tyler, and Waves of the Blue Sea by Washburn. All essentially the same thing, but all a little different. I can't begin to cover all the snippets of the chapter Suematsu has omitted from his translation. I can best say that the differences are like hearing the story from someone who was there and also from a secondhand source. The story is mostly the same, but one loses the finer points. It's almost a summary. One last translation difference, and this one has to do with clothing. To begin his affair with Gen no Naishi, Genji tugs on her garment to tease her. Our translators offer a variety of options. Washburn says it is a robe. Tyler says it's her train, whether he means train as in hem of a gown, or the garment known as a mo, a pleated train tied at the waist, I'm not certain. Seidensticker says apron. I doubt this translation because gentlewomen in service at the court, especially those in service to the emperor, wore an ensemble known as juni hitue, topped with a karaginu and a mo, a kind of jacket and the train garment I described. A servant dressed in an apron would be appropriate for someone in service at a villa, as some of the ladies at Suetsu Muhana's villa are described to wear, but images from our author's period show court ladies in full dress. The title of the chapter is not our only seasonal reference. We also read about falling colorful leaves, and the diminished leaves in Genji's headdress are replaced with chrysanthemums that have been kissed by frost. We learn that sometime in or after the start of the 4th month, gillyflowers, pinks, are in bloom. One last interesting descriptor. The celebration at the beginning of the chapter is held on the 10th day of the godless month, according to Waley's translation. The godless month, or Kanazuki, is the 10th month, and the 10th month marks the beginning of winter. According to Shinto tradition, all the gods of Japan gather together in Izumi Taisha during this month. We once again have a tidbit concerning the new year, but not just the new year. There's an interesting custom that I've noticed at least twice now. In this chapter, when Genji finds Murasaki attempting to mend a dollhouse that Inuki damaged, he tells her not to cry because it is the new year. In Chapter 5, Waka Murasaki, when Shonagun travels with Genji and Murasaki to Nijo, she almost weeps over the circumstances, but does not, as it is not a thing to do at the start of something, in this case Murasaki's new and strange relationship with Genji. No crying at the beginning of things then. No one needs the bad luck. This chapter provides 2 instances of promotion in rank. The first is near the beginning of the chapter. At the end of the celebration, Genji, Tono Chujo, and many others, according to their merits, are all promoted. There's also a mention that Genji was pulling everyone up with him. At the end of the chapter, when Fujitsubo is promoted to Empress, Genji is also promoted. We're told that the promotion to Empress was done to make her position firmer, as the Emperor is beginning plans to abdicate in favor of the heir apparent and making his newest son the next in line. His promotion of Genji, and the comments by our narrator that there is no one powerful enough to stand for the child in court, are hints that he plans to make Genji that person. It's interesting to see this little bit of court intrigue playing out in promotions. During the celebration, Chinese and Korean dances are performed, and there are 2 music marches, one Chinese and one Korean. Genji's dance, the Blue Sea Waves, is a Chinese-based dance in which the main dancer stops and the music also stops as a Chinese poem is recited. After sending a poem to her, asking if she enjoyed his dancing, Genji is delighted with a rare response from Fujitsubo that revealed she not only enjoyed his performance, but also that she knew the dance was Chinese in origin, folding that cleverly in her response poem. Genji remarks she was already acting as an empress should, this of course 8 months before her elevation. We have a clothing reference in that dance that Genji performed. There is a sleeve twirl, where the sleeve is wound back around the arm while dancing, before and then unwound after reciting a bit of Chinese poetry. I wonder if this was actually a signal to the musicians to stop or resume playing. Our next clothing reference also has to do with a sleeve. When Genji and Tono Chujo playfully scuffle in Gen no Naishi's apartment, clothing is torn. Specifically, the end of one of Genji's sleeves is missing. Washburn gets this a little turned about in his translation. The court garment that Genji was attempting to put on, a noshi, has an extra panel width on the sleeves, but his translation makes it seem as though he had something dangling from his sleeves, making me imagine something like European tippets. Washburn says, he inspected the cloak again and found one of the sleeves missing the long piece of cloth that was supposed to hang beneath. There are no dangly bits on Japanese men's court garment sleeves, not on the lady sleeves either. I also chafe at the use of cloak to describe a noshi. Washburn is not alone in his use of it, but I don't have a better suggestion at the moment that is as succinct. This is why some things should just remain in the original language and the book gets a glossary. Garment names just don't translate into a language that lacks that garment. I'm irritated that a book so well known for its clothing descriptions is not more carefully treated in that regard. But the clothing of the period is a major focus of my study, so are you really surprised? It is mentioned that trousers are sent along with an obi to Genji from Gen no Naishi. I imagine this was Murasaki Shikibu making sure the reader knew how far the affair had gone that night. It also lets us know that Genji must have been quite a sight going back to his apartment, likely no pants, his noshi bundled in his arms, completely disheveled from the tussle. On New Year's Eve, Murasaki changes her dress from mourning clothes into plain, modest, unfigured colors, crimson, lavender, and yellow. Mourning robes may possibly be made from wisteria cloth. I know I've come across a reference to that before, but I'm having trouble locating a source to share. It might even be from an upcoming footnote in some future chapter. There is quite a bit of mourning that happens in this tale. I'll keep hunting for a source. At the very least, she was wearing gray tones during her 3-month mourning period. Even now, out of deference to how close she was with her grandmother, her clothing is subdued in both weave and dye choices. Genji also instructs for her teeth to be blackened. Her eyebrows are not plucked yet, but color is applied to them when she is made up. These two beauty treatments may seem a little odd to us 1,000 years later. While tooth blackening is no longer standardly practiced in Japan, there are women all over the world that remove their eyebrows and draw on what they believe to be most beautiful. In the Heian period, these were moth eyebrows, smudges higher on the forehead than natural brows. We have 2 accessories to talk about to round out our clothing section. The first is an obi. After Genji's first promotion of the chapter, his father-in-law, Sadaijin, once again officiously helps Genji dress, presenting him with a famous obi to wear. This obi, or belt, is made of lacquered leather studded with white jade, visible at the back of his noshi to reflect his rank. The second is Gen no Naishi's fan. It is described as reflective, possibly lacquered red ground, so shiny you can see yourself in it. On it, painted in gold, are several tall trees, and written in an outmoded style of calligraphy, a snippet of poetry. I'm very tempted to make a copy of this item, but my project list is quite full at the moment. Is there a particular thing that has been described in the tale so far that you would like to recreate or just have? I'm also intrigued by furniture, such as the armrests that were used for lounging. What stood out for you in this chapter? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Join me next time for Chapter 8, Momiji no ga. Subscribe if you'd like to explore the Heian period of Japan with me through the tale of Genji.